Most business owners start on QuickBooks, but at some point, the very tool that kept you organized can actually hold you back. How do you know when it's time to move on or what you should move on to? In this episode of Profit with a Plan, we're talking about the signs that you've outgrown QuickBooks and why that's actually a milestone worth celebrating, and how to transition into a new system that supports scale, not just survival. So if you've ever wondered whether your financial setup is helping you grow or quietly limiting you, this conversation is one you don't want to miss. Hey entrepreneurs, are you working too hard for too little profit? Well, welcome to Profit with a Plan podcast, where we help you scale smarter, increase profitability, and build a business that's worth more, whether you keep it or sell it. I'm Marcia Riner, business growth strategist and profit booster behind Infinite Profit. I've helped countless entrepreneurs to turn their businesses into highly profitable and sale-ready assets so they can enjoy more income now and a bigger payday later on. So join me for practical strategies, expert insights, and proven steps to make your business more profitable, more valuable, and built to last. Today's episode is sponsored by Infinite Profit, where we don't just talk profit, we deliver it. And I thought I'd share with you something before we dive in. If you're a business owner who's tired of overcomplicated, overpriced marketing strategies that just don't seem to deliver, then listen up. What if you had a simple, affordable way to market your business that actually worked? The Profit Booster Marketing Hub gives you templates, automations, and tools to capture leads, nurture them, and close more sales without the tech headache. See it in action at profitbooster.biz. All right, let's jump into today's episode. I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Laresa McIntyre. She is the founder of Rockbridge CFO, where she serves as a fractional CFO for growth stage service businesses. Laresa brings a wealth of experience as a former corporate CFO, having led both finance and HR in global organizations. Now she partners directly with founders who want more than just profits. What? She helps them build businesses that are sustainable, scalable, and truly driven. Laresa, thanks for joining me on Profit with a Plan today. I'm excited.
I'm excited to be here too.
Yeah, so I always love to start off the conversation because, people always seem to land or evolve into their career. How did you get into the CFO space and helping companies grow like you have?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, I was in the corporate world as a CFO for 15 years. And when you're a corporate CFO, you get to help one founder, one business.
Mm.
And, if you've got ideas that don't really fit within that space, sometimes they don't really allow you to really grow.
Mm.
So I decided to go out into the fractional space. So this gives me an opportunity to work with multiple businesses and multiple founders. And it's challenging sometimes because there are so many different things that you can run into, but at the same time, it's really exciting and it's always something different.
I love it. So in the CFO world, you're looking at what, right? Just so we can give kind of a definition of a CFO. I mean, you and I know very clearly what that means, but maybe the audience might be thinking it's something else.
Sure. So you have a bookkeeper, maybe an accountant, and they're really focused on the present or the past, making
Mm.
sure that your financial statements are stated correctly, making sure you're okay from a tax perspective and that type of thing. Whereas a CFO is really somebody who looks at the future, somebody who's looking at forecasting strategy, how to help you grow your business. And they're able to bring in a lot of experience and insights about business that will help you figure out what are the next steps I need to make to really grow my business. And that's how they kind of separate themselves a little bit from the bookkeepers and the accountants and the controllers of the world.
And that is so important. And I'm glad you explained that the way you did, because, definitely the tax people are looking what happened last year. The accountants are trying to keep all the numbers organized for right now, and the controller's trying to manage the finances of the business. But, it's so it's so important to have a team member like you on board that would allow them to say, hey, financially, where do I want to go, right? Does it make sense to implement this strategy financially, right? And yes, you could probably come in and talk about sales, and you could come and talk about marketing or HR, like you said, you have that skill set. But it's all the numbers and the financial being of your business that honestly, and you'll probably agree with me that the business owner just doesn't see or understand in the depth that they really should. So you're a fantastic partner on that level, right?
Oh, absolutely. Look, founders have tons of hats they have to wear. They really have to be focused on every aspect of their business. And a lot of times they're not, grounded in financial information, or they haven't come from that background. So it's sometimes difficult for them to take a financial statement and look at it and really suss out what they need to be focused on, where maybe their pain points are, what are causing some issues within their business. And when they can bring in somebody like me who can help them because of the experience I've got, it makes things so much easier and it gives them a good sounding board. It's being a founder is a very lonely thing. And, it's always good when you have people that can back you up and give you some sense of confidence about what it is you're doing within your business.
Exactly. And the thing that I love so much about it is that numbers don't lie. They can be packaged and created incorrectly, but the data is the data. And if you're able to look at these numbers and go, oh, this makes perfect sense and explain it in a layman's term to the founder, then it just makes them go, oh, okay, I didn't realize that. I thought I was so much farther ahead, or I thought this initiative we were taking was really paying off, but might not be. Having that eyesight and that the brain power that works in that way is so important. But you know what? I think the funny thing that people, the business owners fear is that, oh, I've got to hire one for me. Well, no, as you mentioned, the fractional, you don't have to hire one for you, right?
Right, exactly. Look, CFO salaries are quite high. I mean, sometimes it's two, three, $400,000, and there's bonuses, and sometimes some of them are looking for equity. And if you're, making 3 million in revenue a year, that's a pretty
That's
big
a
chunk of
chunk.
your bottom line. So being able to bring in a fractional makes a lot of sense. You get that insight and the CFO level experience without having to be an enterprise level company. And that's what I really like is the fact that I can come in and give people my insights and my expertise and they can still afford it.
Yes. And I think that's the fractional space has really taken off over the last few years, which is perfect for the growth-minded business owner that is really striving to that next level, right? And they're not the enterprises or the major corporations. They're just trying to, make ends meet, make a little, green profit and, take care of their employees and their customers, right? To have that insight of what really truly can make a business, more money going into your pocket, more opportunities that you could take advantage of. That's where it really pays off. So thank you for defining that. I mean, I know that wasn't the point of the conversation, but it is so important when looking at the way we do business that to have that kind of person on your team and more favorably, in a fractional position where you're not having to pay, all the extra stuff of having a key employee on team. So
Right.
that's good. All right, so let's talk about what we came to talk about a little bit today, which is what happens when we really start to grow and how do we recognize when we should get rid of systems that we have and maybe look for different systems going in. And perfect example would be your accounting systems.
Right, absolutely. Look, a lot of smaller businesses start out on, QuickBooks, maybe even QuickBooks Online or Xero or FreshBooks, and that's great when you're small and you're not complicated. But there is going to reach a point where getting data out of your system or getting the financial information you need to really get your insights becomes difficult. you're living in spreadsheets all the time because you can't pull anything out of the system. You really have a difficult time doing forecasts and budgeting because of it. And that's when it's time to kind of take a step back and say, you know what, maybe we need to take a reset and take a look at our financial system and figure out what do we need, not just for now, but also what we need over the next 3 to 5 years. Anybody that's gone through a systems implementation or software implementation knows this is
Yeah.
not something you want to do every year. This is something you want to kind of have it service you for the next 3 to 5 years before you
Yes.
maybe have to either give some consideration to another upgrade or figure out what can I do to change what I've got. And it's not just the software too, it's really looking at your processes and looking at,
Mm.
your business holistically. I've got some experience doing these software implementations when it comes to finance. And it's really about sitting down and figuring out what do we need and what are we trying to get out of it, and making some good evaluations so that you can pick the right system and
Yes.
work on it.
I think that's really important because oftentimes the business owner goes, okay, if I've got to change my whole process and financial system on it, and I know my employees are going to be screaming and yelling at me because they're going to have to learn something new, and we're going to need the ramp up time, then the business owner's thinking, well, why don't I just go buy the biggest, the best, which may not be the best, step either because you're buying something that's maybe either too sophisticated or very often too expensive for what you need today.
Exactly, exactly. And I see it a lot. I've seen companies get roped into these big ERPs that they really don't need. So
Yeah.
there are some other options out there that are kind of at that mid-level that really make a lot of sense. Now, look, if your business is complicated, you're dealing with a lot of inventory or you're in manufacturing,
Use and
that's
yeah,
a whole different ballgame.
right.
But if you're a service-based business, there's a lot of different options that you have available to you outside of QuickBooks that will give you those financial insights and the data that you need out of your financial system as you grow.
And I think that's so important. I mean, any bookkeeper can 99.999% of bookkeepers say, oh, they're QuickBooks certified, right? But
Hmm.
because it's so simple and so basic that anybody can do it. Now, the mid-level softwares that could really help you mine the data, as you keep suggesting, they're not going to be that much more difficult. It's just knowing where the buttons are and where the forms are, and but the data going in is the same, right? It's nothing,
Well,
it shouldn't be that complicated.
now it's more about the way the data goes in, as you said. I mean, a user interface, you want to look for something that has a nice user interface, but the key difference between, say, QuickBooks or FreshBooks and maybe something like Business Central or NetSuite, which are two of the kind of mid-level options that you can look at, is something called dimensions. So you think about it, you have your chart of accounts. Everybody knows I have an account for my marketing expenses, or I have an account for travel, and I might be able to assign departments to those expenses. So I know how much my sales team spent or how much my operations team spent. What those mid-level systems do is they give you multiple dimensions. So now, for example, I have marketing expenses, but now I can add on what channel did those marketing expenses come from? Was it social media? What part of social media? Was it Facebook? Was it LinkedIn? And now when you start looking at, for example, cost of your customer acquisition and trying to
Mm.
figure out what marketing channels really brought me the best ROI, now you've got the data to be able to dig in and say, okay, this is how much we spent on Facebook. We got X number of customers. There's the CAC. And it just makes it much easier for you to make business decisions when you've got that kind of information available to you.
I love it. Yay. And not just for marketing, but the simplicity of being able to mine that data is so much more important. As you say, the entry level accounting systems don't let you divide and departmentalize the pieces that need to come in and come out.
Well, they
And yeah,
can, but the problem that you run into is you have to do it through a chart of accounts. And look, anybody that's been has done accounting, once you get a chart of accounts that starts to explode because you have to add in all these extra accounts just to get that granularity, it becomes very difficult to manage it. And that's why having the ability to keep one account and just add the dimensions makes it so much better.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So at what phase in a business do we start to look at that? When would the light go on and go, okay, we're ready to change? What kind of signals would come out? Are your podcast guest appearances leading to real business, or are you just hoping that listeners will take action? With the Profit Booster Podcast Monetization Hub, we turn your interviews into lead generating machines so that you capture, nurture, and convert listeners into paying clients. So stop leaving money on the table and get started today at profitboosterpod.com.
I think it's really when you're not getting the insights that you need easily from your system. Profitability, things like your margin, being able to break margin down. If you've got multiple entities or multiple locations and you want to be able to track information from those entities separately and also consolidate them all together, that's usually a good signal. Anytime you feel where your financial system is your pain point and it's not giving you what you need without somebody spending days mining the data, that's when you really need to take a step back and say, okay,
Got it.
do we have the right system in place? And if not, what should we be looking for?
Yeah, and I think that that's really important when it becomes a challenge to get that data, or when the founder's saying, all I need to know is what we're doing in this initiative that we're working on. Is it working on it? And then the team starts, busting a sweat going, well, I put it here together and it's kind of here. But how does the founder, I mean, it sounds like you'd have to be told by your financial team that we're outgrowing our current system. Rather, where the founder's just saying, I want some answers, and the financial team gives them answers, but didn't tell them that it took them, 3 days to produce those answers, or that those answers may be incorrect.
No, and that's very true. And I think that's where, founders need to make sure they're asking questions.
Mm,
If it's all about communication, right? So if you're looking at your finance team and asking them for something and they're looking at you like, "Oh my God, what is they just asked me to do?" and they start to sweat and it takes them days to put things together, that's like a big red
mm,
flag.
mm,
It should never take a team a huge amount of time to put information together. Business doesn't stop just because their financial system isn't giving you what you need. Your business still continues, and the quicker you can get the information you need, the quicker you can make a decision, the quicker you can make sure that you're moving in the right direction. So, it's all about communication and making sure you're keeping that line open with your finance team and saying, guys, you need to tell me when you think that there's problems, when it's creating an issue for you to get the information, because then I can help and step in. And,
right.
you know,
Right. Wow. Okay. So this is really great. So when we're looking at making that decision, and you mentioned companies like NetSuite that are perfect for the mid-level companies and so on. Do they often have those long commitments and those long situations where you've got to commit to a significant period of time, and then the transition from QuickBooks into a company like NetSuite would take, okay, we're going to shift it over in a month, and I mean, it just seems like it's like stress.
it can be. And that's why the first thing you need to do is really sit down and say, what is it that we need?
Mm.
So that you don't end up
With
signing up for more than what you need, even for the next 3 years. You know, the way NetSuite prices their things and the way like Business Central does it is two different, totally different things. Like I'm very familiar with Business Central, and the
Mhm.
reason I like Business Central is if you're already using Microsoft and Microsoft 365, it's a Microsoft product,
Oh,
so
nice.
it integrates so nicely with all of the different Microsoft Suite items, uh, and it's $70 a month for a
Oh my
user.
goodness.
And you can pay it on a monthly basis. NetSuite, that's a little different. You've got
I was
different
gonna say,
modules, and you have to figure out which modules you want. And, yes, there's probably a contract you have to lock yourself into, and that's all part of the negotiating. I'm not saying that shouldn't be something you look at, but you just have to go in with your eyes wide open.
okay, thank you. Because I was starting to sweat when you said NetSuite. And NetSuite's a fantastic company. All of these companies are fantastic
Yes.
for the right situation. But yeah, it can really get, if you ever thought of implementing a Salesforce, right? I mean, it's a beast
It
when all you
is.
need is this little pie slice over here. And it could really throw you for a loop, the difficulties and the interconnections, because it's designed to grow with you to be this big company or this big software suite that you have. But when you're getting in at the lower level, it can be quite intimidating.
It can be. It can be. And that's where, bringing in somebody who's got some experience in it is really helpful. You know, your bookkeeper, if they're QuickBooks qualified, may not have experience with some of the
Yeah.
other systems. So you definitely want to make sure you're bringing in somebody who can help guide you through the process
And the
and make
team.
sure that you're asking the right questions about, what it is that you need. They also can help you look at your current processes. Look, change is inevitable in life.
Yes.
And I know people get really hung up
Freaked
with
out.
change management and, oh, I don't want to learn a new system. But sometimes it's a good thing. But, it does take, you have to take a step back and look at what are my current processes. And you have to make sure if you do select a piece of software that it's not square peg, round hole. You
Mm,
may have to change your processes, but it may be for the better. Uh, you know, I'll give you an example. I mean, if you're currently putting terms out for your customers and you're
mm,
having difficulty collecting money or anything like that, and you have a certain process that you're using, well, maybe that process isn't really benefiting you. Going to new software and a new process may actually accelerate your receivables, bringing more cash in quicker and freeing up your working capital so that you can now maybe make some moves that you were kind of holding off on because the cash wasn't in the bank. So, changes in process are not a bad thing. You just have to manage them the right way.
I love it. And so funny that you mentioned that receivables can be quite a challenge, right? I mean, you're fronting your clients your service or products, right? And they've requested a 30 or 60-day pay, or God forbid you're working with, a government issue where you're 3 to 6 months to get paid on it. But I mean, you're fronting that. So having someone that could say, "Hey, is there a better way of managing your system so that everybody wins?" You can boost your cash on cash and have that money in hand so you can make better opportunities, better decisions. And then maybe you can encourage or incentivize your client to pay you earlier, right?
Mhm.
But how do you know this information if you haven't run the data to see where you're going and where those holes and gaps are that people are falling through? And that's why having someone that can see the forest through the trees and be able to read the data and give you that information so you can be more profitable and be more nimble and agile, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
there's so many benefits to running your company off of your financial statements and making those clear decisions that many business owners, especially in the smaller space, they just like they don't look at it.
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
sad.
and sometimes they can get blindsided by their financial statements. I mean, you think, you know, a lot of people look at top line growth. They look at, what's my revenue? They may look at the bottom line, but they're ignoring a
There's a
really
lot of
critical
lines in
piece.
between.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of lines in between, and sometimes they're going, okay, I'm showing a profit and everything looks great, but I got no cash in the bank.
I was just
And
gonna say,
and
comment.
and but it really boils down to not understanding what's in the financial statement. You have to understand there's a lot of timing differences in your financial
Yes.
statement. If I service somebody in the month of September, at the end of September, I'm going to write in my book, I had revenue of X dollars. Well, if they don't pay me till October, I'm still got the revenue on my financial statement that goes to my bottom line, but I haven't got cash in the bank. And there's
And you
tons of
still have expenses, employees, taxes, and everything on that money that you haven't even collected yet.
exactly. So, you have to really understand all these timing differences and not just be blind to, I'm only going to look at the P&L or I'm
Yeah.
only going to look at the balance sheet. You really have to look at your suite of financial statements, your P&L, your cash flow statement, your balance sheet. And for God's sakes, please, please, please do a 12-week cash forecast because without that visibility, you're just going to run yourself into trouble and you're going to have a lot of sleepless nights.
And this is super valuable, Larissa, because the business owner's not thinking about this and they're relying on their financial team or their accounting team to provide this data for them. And oftentimes their financial or accounting team might be someone's wife or, someone Susie Q that is in, that's been their bookkeeper forever, but is not a financial forecaster. I mean, there's so many gaps that can happen without realizing where the breakdowns are in there until maybe the eye opener for the business owners, they're trying to get some funding for some new equipment or a building, right?
Yeah.
There's the big shocker, right? When they go, oh, you know, uh, um, you know, or, a love letter from the IRS that comes in and says, oh, hey, maybe you didn't do something right, or, maybe you're looking to invest or have investors invest in you. This
Mm-hmm.
is that perfect time that you really want your books to showcase a very profitable and strong company,
Mm-hmm.
or you're delivering to the IRS and you want your books to show a very not profitable and expense-driven company, right? So these books are the same, but they can really showcase and forecast different outlooks. And if you don't have someone smart like you on your team to be able to analyze those numbers, you're driving blind.
Yeah. Well, you brought up a very interesting point about investors. Investors are sophisticated people and they're not looking for QuickBooks P&L. They are looking for you to provide them not just your financial statements, but some insights and a story. It's
Mm,
all about the story and your financials have to tell what is this company going to do so that the investor feels that they understand where you're headed and they have some faith in what it is that you're saying to them. Look, we can all say, I'm going to grow the business 10, 20% next year.
sure.
Great. But if you aren't able to show or back that up with a story that's I'm sorry, that says, here's my marketing plan.
Yes.
Here's how I'm planning on, getting clients. Here's how I'm planning on operating the business. Here's my staffing plan. Those are all components of things that investors are going to be looking at so that they have some understanding of what you're putting in front of them. It's not just the P&L. It's you got to have the story to go with it.
And a large, significant portion of that story are financial numbers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you're not keeping those active, they look back, right? And so when that opportunity comes, if you're not clean and organized now, then you have to shuffle and look back, oftentimes 3 years to get those numbers in line. So that way it now becomes clean and organized for those opportunities that you have, but then that, you may have missed the opportunity in the meantime. So the best thing that I love to have is to have smart people on your team that are looking and organizing and keeping things going, not just the bookkeeping for taxes, but bookkeeping and accounting and financial statements and forecasting and the whole thing to help you grow forward so that when that opportunity comes, they usually only land in those that are prepared.
Right. Exactly. And it's all about being prepared.
Yeah. This has been amazing, Laresa. I know that we can, numbers, I geek out on them. I don't like to prepare them, but I can review them and understand them. And you love to make sure that they're organized and keep in pace. So I know we can talk on this for a long time, but without freaking the audience out, because numbers panic people.
Yeah.
How do they start to feel confident in their understanding of their numbers, and maybe having that team person or that fractional person like you come on board? When do they start to look at that?
Look, I think as soon as you are feeling uncomfortable about the disconnect between your gut check and what's actually happening in your business, that's probably a good time to start thinking about it. Uh, Look, as founders, we rely on our gut a lot. We're
Mm,
passionate about the project that we're working on. We're passionate about getting it out to the masses. And a lot of times in the early days, you're working on your gut. There will come a time when your gut just it doesn't work anymore, and that's when you
not
have to.
not for what you needed to do.
No, absolutely. And you just need to take a step back and say, you know what, I need some help. And there's nothing wrong with saying you need help. I mean, nobody is expecting you to be Superman or Superwoman. If you know the signals and at least you get the right people on board, then you have a much better chance of success.
Love it, love it. All right, Larissa, where can listeners find out more about you and getting some help?
Yeah. If they want to visit my website, it's rockbridgecfo.com. And actually, if they go to the insights part of the menu, I have a whole blog out there. And that cash flow forecast I was telling you about, there's a blog on that and a template that they can pull down.
Oh,
So if they want to do that, it's got instructions and it will help them at least get that 12-week cash flow forecast up and running. And then they can take a look at some of the other blog posts and the information about Rockbridge and see if maybe it might be a good fit so that they can give me a call and we can chat.
I love it. I love it. It is so important to look at that short window of where the cash is coming from and what can you do, right? What have I got coming down the pipeline, right? We look at that oftentimes in sales or when we're looking at different things, but when you look at it in your company as cash coming in, that's even sweeter. So awesome. I love that you're doing that for us. Thank you so much.
It has been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah. All right, listeners, thanks for tuning in today. I hope you picked up some valuable insights and actionable ideas that will help you make your business more profitable. And remember, if you're tired of overpriced marketing that's complicated and time-consuming, then the Profit Booster Marketing Hub is your low-cost, easy-to-use alternative to expensive strategies, complete with automations, templates, and a personalized strategy call. So grab some details at profitbooster.biz. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe. You don't want to miss future shows. You can always find Profit with a Plan on any of your favorite podcast players. We're looking forward to more great profitable strategies on next week's show. So until then, make your plans and profit with them. Thanks so much, Larissa.
Thank you.